The Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Hello and welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience. I am not Pat Mayo, strangely enough. I am Garion Thorne, guest hosting for Pat as he is instilling hot take culture onto young minds back at home. We want to give our congratulations, obviously, to Pat and his lovely wife. Congratulations, guys. It's going to be a crazy ride. So is the 2019 fantasy baseball season. And honestly, you probably don't want Pat here for this anyway. Pat self-admittedly knows nothing about baseball, but someone who does know a lot about baseball and hockey and basketball and football is Kris Meaney of The Athletic and Fantrax. Kris, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going well, man. Yes, congratulations to Pat.
Yep.
For sure. Very exciting times for him and his family. Wish him all the best. And just happy to be here to talk some baseball. We turn the page on football. Like, it was a tough week last week, you know?
Yeah.
Just turn the page.
Yeah.
Talk
Although,
some baseball.
I feel like you guys are happy to get there. I have a cousin who's an Eagles fan.
Yeah.
And he was kind of crying about it a little bit. And I was like,
Yeah, it's fine.
he used the phrase like, Foles choked. I was like,
Oh,
you're not
that's
allowed.
rough.
You're not allowed to be
That's
mad
rough.
at
For anybody in
Nick
the
Foles at
Philly,
this
yeah,
point,
the
man.
Philly fan base who can blame that loss on Foles it's completely unacceptable. It was a good ride. Obviously, like, did not even care if that team made the playoffs and didn't look like they were going to, and they made it. But yeah, so here we are, baseball, January.
Exactly.
It's snowing out in Toronto.
It is snowing a great deal in Toronto, so no better time to talk about baseball. So what we're going to do to kind of get ourselves, to be perfectly honest, kind of back into the flow of baseball, but also everyone else, going to start by just breaking down the top 20 average draft position as we sit here in January. And obviously want to remind everybody, again, it's January.
Things are going to change for sure.
Things are going to change a lot. Like even we're using Fantrax ADP right now. Could be slightly skewed. A lot of people play Dynasty on Fantrax, so also take that
Some
into
best ball, too.
consideration. Best ball as well. But I did go check out NFBC up to January 19th. They've had 71 NFBC drafts take place so far. Basically the same top 20, give or take a couple of spots for each guy. We're going to talk about some sleepers on a couple other shows for the baseball preview here on the Pat Mayo Experience. Some of those rankings differ a little bit, which makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, even writing on Fantrax a couple sleepers as much as a week and a half ago, just looking this morning before I came over, just a couple spots already, whether it's like SP 57 to 54, or
some of them just smack you in the face. You're like, wow, that guy's not going to be drafted there for much longer.
No.
But we're going to talk about all that. Like I said, we're going to stick with the best guys in baseball right now because, to be perfectly honest, just when I took a first glance at this top 20, maybe that's a really good place to start, I was kind of taken aback by a couple of the names that were there. So I'm going to read off the top 20 here really quick just to get everyone on the same page. Mike Trout, the best player in baseball, number 1. Mookie Betts, number 2. Jose Ramirez, number 3. Francisco Lindor, number 4. JD Martinez, Trey Turner, Nolan Arenado, Max Scherzer, the first pitcher off the board, Christian Yelich, Ronald Acuna, Manny Machado, Alex Bregman, Chris Sale, Javier Baez, Bryce Harper, Jacob deGrom, Aaron Judge, Jose Altuve at 18, Trevor Story at 19, and Freddie Freeman, Mr. Consistency himself, at 20. Actually, the first baseman off the board this year. So we'll get to Trout in a second, because I do always want to ask you if you can come up with any reason why Mike Trout shouldn't be the top pick in a fantasy draft in 2019. But what would you say was the first thing that caught your eye when you looked at this top 20?
Well, I looked at the top, like a lot of speed. I think the only guys that you mentioned besides the pitchers, obviously, that you're not going to get speed from in the first couple rounds, JD Martinez and Nolan Arenado. I think basically those are the only guys. Now you're paying, for some performances last year, of course, Christian Yelich. Christian Yelich had a phenomenal MVP season. His second half was just absurd, right? 367, I think he hit over 20, I think maybe 25 home runs, like in that second half alone, with just over 260 plate appearances. It's unbelievable what he did, but you're paying for
27 fly balls.
Yeah, so. You're right. So that stands out to me, but a lot of speed for sure. Acuna, you see him there at 10. We're talking about Fantrax ADP. I've seen him, Garion, go as early as a couple drafts I've done so far where he's the 4th player off the board.
Really?
So like that you're paying for, we know, great prospect, phenomenal season last year, got hurt, slowed him down, but that's a hefty price to pay, I think, for somebody in such a small sample size when there's a lot of guys on that list we've seen now numerous times. And then you go into the second round. How about Jose Altuve?
Yeah.
How about a guy who's, been a top 10 fantasy baseball player 2 of the last 3 years, roughly?
A guy who's hitting .331 since 2014. Also injury plagued last season. So this is why I love you, Chris, because we had 20 names here. Basically, we picked out the same 6 guys that were really interesting. Let's start with Acuna though, because I think this one's it's just really interesting. I was someone who last season, and I think you were too, who was okay with paying. It ended up being like a 6th round pick. It really depended when you did the draft. We all knew we were sacrificing April with Acuna. But I was okay. 6th round, I was like, you know what? There's unlimited potential here. There's the possibility of power and speed. And in the 6th round, I often find I have trouble once we get out of the first 5 rounds. Those 6th, 7th rounds, when you're really looking for guys who are just sort of like the secondary stat volume stuffers. Like you're not dealing with stars anymore. You're dealing with guys who are maybe 3 category players, maybe 2 extreme category players. So to take someone with the potential to be a 5-cat guy, you're like, sure, I'll do that every time. I'll sacrifice April. Easiest month to replace guys anyway. So comes out, doesn't do exceedingly well right off the hop. Does all right, though. Goes through a prolonged slump, gets hurt. Running through the bag in Boston, I think it was.
Yeah, that was an ugly injury. I was surprised at the time. I thought he was done for the year.
Yeah.
I thought, we saw Manny Machado had a very similar injury running out, a ground ball, and it was gross to watch. Yeah.
It's tough. Like, that's why they tell you to run through the bag. It's really the most basic principle of baseball, and it's why they tell you that. But comes back second half. Also had the whole thing with, why am I forgetting his name right now? Who's the Marlins pitcher? Jose Urena, who almost broke his hand. So, a lot going on with with Acuna in his rookie season.
Thanks, Urena, for coming out.
Second half, though, 429 WOBA, 171 WRC+, and maybe most impressively, because this is something we see a lot in young players, is the high strikeout rate. And usually, we put that to the side. Like, that's coming with the territory, especially in baseball nowadays, where strikeouts are so prevalent. Yeah. Strikeout rate from the first half to the second half in his rookie season at the age of 21 goes from 30.1% down to 22%. So he was already making crazy adjustments and dropping 8% in strikeout rate from the first half to the second half. So I think the thing that really is standing out to me, you look at his steamer projection, it's got him at a 279 average, 29 home runs, and 25 stolen bases. That's about 600 plate appearances. And I wanted to kind of put a name to that because sometimes stat lines they're hard to comprehend if you can't have a comparable. That's basically Tommy Pham's breakout season from 2017. That to me really seems like a floor. Yeah. And I'm with you. I'm not picking him 4th.
If 4's tough.
But 10, I don't know.
I like 10.
It doesn't seem crazy.
No, it doesn't seem crazy. I mean, you're right about the strikeout numbers. That's extremely impressive for a young player to be able to turn that around, so quickly. Even some of the top guys, like even Trout still deals with strikeouts, and he has, early on in his career, it was up near the 30% at one season. But I mean, you love the lineup. You love the skill set. The average, he's patient. I know he strikes. I know that there's the swinging strike percentage and the strikeout percentage was high to start the season, but you saw some adjustments in the second half where he was taking pitches. He was up near the leadoff spot at one point. Yeah,
that was the other kind of weird thing right now is they're not sure. I think the report from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution was he's either going to be the leadoff hitter or the cleanup hitter. It's like, that's a wide range.
Yeah, I mean,
so either he's going to be really good at runs or RBIs, but I guess
they got some guys that can move around. I mean, Albies can go at 1. I mean, if JD's going to hit 2, I don't know if he's going to hit 4. I think Freeman's locked into that 3 spot, but I mean, Inciarte was hitting leadoff at one point. Yeah. He's probably better suited maybe as the 9th hitter. They got a lot that they can do, in their lineup, but I think for where he's going, like I said, 10 is an extreme discount, but at 4, you're taking him ahead of proven guys like JD Martinez had a phenomenal season. Maybe there's some regression there for him for sure, but he's still a great average hitter in a powerful lineup. He's going to give you some pop for sure. And then again, Nolan Arenado is maybe this is the last year in Colorado. We can talk about the splits all we want, but it's just so safe, right? It really is. So I think at 5, 6, that's where I start to think about him. I like Lindor too, and kind of just glossed over him. At the shortstop position, this is somebody who contributes across the board as well.
Well, let's talk about those Cleveland guys for a second, because Jose Ramirez comes in at number 3, Francisco Lindor comes in at number 4. I think one thing that sort of surprised me, and maybe again it could just be that it's January and some people haven't really come back to baseball, haven't maybe been cycling through some of the signings, because I get it. Like we're filming this right now. The 2 biggest names still haven't signed.
Right.
So I can understand why maybe people think not a lot has happened yet if you're not really keeping a close eye on this. But 2 Cleveland players inside the top 4, both immensely skilled. In no way am denying that. And it's kind of funny even looking at that top 5. Like I wrote an article last year, and it was like my bold predictions for the 2018 season. And one of them I made, initially, it was going to be like Jose Ramirez finishes as a top 3 player. And I was like, that's probably not bold enough. I'm going to say that Jose Ramirez finishes as the best fantasy baseball player in 2018. Looked really good at the All-Star
close
break.
Being dead on there.
But second half of the season, 208 BABIP, really just sewers his batting average. And kind of gets a little like Trevor Story-itis, where this is someone who, for a time, like coming into last season, we questioned whether or not he could recreate the power. I think we were all pretty like, this guy's a 300 hitter. That's the thing that's set in stone. Probably going to steal 20 bags. Turned out to be 30, which is great.
Yeah.
But we were thinking like, he's definitely going to be a 3.5 category contributor. If he can hit 20 home runs again, it's found money. All of a sudden, he's a power hitter, and it seemed like he was really selling out for power. Like his fly ball rate went nuts in the second half. It was 48%. Hard contact rate went way down. Infield fly ball rate went way up.
Red flag?
Not great.
You have some concerns there?
I don't know if I'm concerned, because I think I keep coming back to like the BABIP's really bad. That kind of correlates with someone who becomes an extreme fly ball hitter, but not 208 BABIP.
Right.
Like that's really bad. So I think it was kind of just an aberration in that second half, but I am a little curious. I figured someone who'd maybe, I guess it's been 2 years now with Jose Ramirez, but I still figured someone who had as bad a second half as he did and was not great in the playoffs either.
No, he wasn't.
I figured people would kind of hold that against him. I was a little surprised to see him locked in at number 3. And on top of that, like I don't really have anything bad to say about Lindor, but do people still think Cleveland's Cleveland? Because no Michael Brantley.
Yeah. No Edwin.
No Edwin. No Yonder Alonso.
No.
JD wasn't there long, but no Josh Donaldson either. Like,
it
kind of seems like they're sort of tanking, maybe.
And
or they just think they can tie one arm behind their back and win the Central, which
that's
very
true.
possible.
Well, that's very true. When you look inside the division, Minnesota has improved offensively, I'd say.
Yeah,
we'll get into some sleepers in a little bit, but they bring in Cruz and bring in Scope and CJ Cron. But yeah, everybody else inside that division, Kansas City and Detroit and the White Sox, not great. But, I think, and you hear reports that they're close to trading Kluber or they're visiting that. And I mean, if they deal Kluber, then I feel like they still think that the window is open. They also lost Cody Allen and Andrew Miller too, right? I mean, they've lost some guys this season, but interesting numbers for JD Martinez in the second half. This is somebody that, Pat and I this is the 3rd year of
League of Leagues, right?
He was like 40th round. We took that guy 2 years ago.
It's amazing.
And I mean, patient at the plate, great eye. I seen some of that too, swinging for the fences, and that is a little bit.
But that's
concerning.
more like his archetype.
I think so too. But I just think he's an all around phenomenal hitter. I wonder if it's because there was such a discount last year still for him going in the second round. Like he was the guy in the second round that I thought, you're not alone. Like he could be a first round talent, and this year you're certainly paying up for him. But I still think it's fair. To me, I would rather. Again, it's the speed, right? Like, I don't want to over.
It's like why Trey Turner's going 6th.
Yeah,
right?
it's like. I mean, you can always get stolen bases a little bit later on, so it's not the end of the world if you want to go. Okay, I'm going to go with JD Martinez here. I'm going to take more power, more RBIs, perhaps.
Yep.
I'm going to take JD in that outfield spot, especially if there's people playing with 5 outfielders. I feel honestly looking at the rankings this season it gets pretty thin in outfield for whatever reason. For me, I feel it's completely different this year. I think that there's some sleeper candidates in the outfield position, but if you're playing with 4 and 5, I like to lock down 1 or 2. So maybe JD for me is more of a 5 or a 6, but I think the reason his ADP is at 3, I don't know, Garion. I think there's just some safety. I think that's what people are seeing. They're just like, past couple years, contributing across the board everywhere, decent average. But you're right. Maybe Cleveland maybe they're on their way out. That lineup's not going to be as good.
I just feel like they're probably going to score like 80, 90 runs less. So again, I have no problem with Lindor, no problem with Ramirez. I like what you're saying with JD Martinez too. Like I think that especially if you do play in those, they're not really specialty leagues. I would say most leagues have 4 outfielders pretty set in stone at this point. But if you're playing on a 5, you might want to lock it down early.
I usually kind of, wait it out. I've done a couple drafts and 5 outfielders, and it's like, oh boy. I get past like where I'm looking at my 3rd, and it's like I really need this guy to pan out here. It's like 1 or 2 categories. Like you're not getting the average. You're maybe getting some home runs, and you're not getting the stolen bases. But I think that entire first 10 is fair. Like, what about Yelich?
Yeah, okay.
Yelich is a guy who could go 4th or 5th.
I need to talk to you about Yelich because I would say more unlike football, where the turnover in football is so quick. Like, if they didn't change the personnel, they changed the coaching staff. If they didn't change the entire coaching staff, they brought in like a new offensive coordinator, or there's new offensive linemen, or there's a new slot receiver. Like something changes every year to kind of change your perception on players. And I understand that Yelich went from an awful ballpark, Marlins Park, to an amazing ballpark, Miller Park. I've got this crazy bias, and I'll admit it. I've always been biased against Christian Yelich. I don't think I've never thought he was I shouldn't say a good fantasy baseball player. I would always say I thought he was a better real life baseball player than he was a fantasy baseball player. And my big reason was always he can't get the ball off the ground. It actually went down last year. It went from 25% to 23%.
It's unbelievable. His career mark is like 20 or 22 or something like that.
He had the 8th lowest qualified ground ball rate. And I actually went through, so the other 9 players inside the bottom 10 in ground ball rate averaged 9.2 home runs. They're the exact guys you would think they're going to be. But this keeps happening. So I'm not, there's something about Miller Park. And obviously the stats bear it out. It's a hitter's park. Yeah. Yelich is an extremely, he has power.
He does have power.
The launch angle is not the ideal launch angle for someone who you're expecting to perennially hit 30 home runs. But you keep going through these aberration seasons. Like last year, I think one of the only players to hit 30 plus home runs with a fly ball rate below 30% was Domingo Santana. The year before that, the only guy to do it was Ryan Braun. There's a connecting factor here. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm still just being super biased when I look at someone who had a 48.1% home run to fly ball ratio in the second half and a 42.3% home run to fly ball ratio at home for the entire, those numbers are stupid, but he's good. So I'm torn.
He's the red flag for me in the top 10. He really is. I think he's a phenomenal hitter. I think he's patient at the plate. I think he's a tough out. Like all those corny little sayings for baseball.
He's a really good hitter, though.
He really is. He's a really good hitter in a good ballpark in what I think is a phenomenal lineup. If they're healthy and they stay healthy, I think it's a really solid lineup. But you look up and down that lineup, and Aguilar is another guy who could maybe regress a little bit. There's some regression candidates for sure. And you're right about the second half. It's just, that's absurd. The 48 home run. That's unbelievable. Have you seen a number like that?
No. I always try to compare it to something to give it some context. I remember a couple years back, Aaron Judge's rookie season. Yeah. It was 33% for the entirety of the year. And at the time, that seemed crazy.
I think he had 11 home runs in the first half and 25. Yeah. In the second half in fewer plate appearances. Almost
now it gets
100.
Hotter. Although Miller Park is a dome when it wants to be. So I don't know.
It's for me, again, I'm not telling anybody out there if you're drafting and you see Yelich fall to 7 or 8, it's I'm not going to take him because you're going to see some regression because he's still going to contribute across the board.
Is 320, 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases.
There's nothing wrong with
85. That's probably enough.
Right. And I think that's his floor. Maybe he only gets to 20, maybe 25 home runs is respectable, but 280 average, sure. But
the runs and RBIs
are probably higher. Especially if he's going to hit in the 1 or 2, he's going to flirt with 90 to 95. Maybe get up to 100. So he's still a strong first round pick. You're just paying for You really are paying for that second half.
I think you've kind of talked me into this. I would say that right now he's sort of. Remember when McCutchen was always going in the first round?
Yeah.
And everyone was like, well, what does he do really, really well? And it was like, well, I guess he's a 310 hitter. Yelich is maybe just the new McCutchen.
Yeah.
With the potential to be better because of the ballpark.
Right. Yeah, I think so. Right around that average. He's going to give you, he's not going to hit 260. He's not going to hit 270. I think he's going to hit at least 280. I really do feel like that. It's just for me to pick him at 4 or 5. Like, again, some drafts I'm doing, it's like, oh, he's the 4th or the 5th. It's like, oh, wow, okay, like, that's the price for him. That's fine, but I know we're splitting hairs here, but I would much rather have him at the end of the first if I'm picking near the end and I can go boom, boom, him and anybody else that I want. But him, and then you get into the second round, people are sour on Javier Baez. I'm fine with Baez too. I just think he's a phenomenal hitter. I get he strikes out a ton, and there's going to be some regression in his numbers too, but you know, I still think he's a solid second round pick, but people are so shy from him is that you're getting him actually in the 3rd. In 3 drafts I've done, he's gone in the 3rd, and everybody in the chat goes, oh, Baez.
Yeah, it seems like people don't want him, which, like you're saying, I understand it because he is someone who he's got all the characteristics of a volatile player. And we'll talk about this guy in particular a little bit more in the Sleepers show, but I compared him last season, and their ADPs were actually not dissimilar. I think Baez was actually going like 20 picks after him. He reminds me a lot of like a more talented Jonathan Scope. And the thing that you have to take into consideration with these players is always, if you're paying top dollar for them, it can bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
It can.
Yeah.
But the difference between Baez and guys like Scope and other high O swing, low contact rate hitters is he also brings 30, 35 plus steal potential to the table. He's going to be hitting in the middle of a reasonably good lineup. You would expect the Cubs to probably be better than last season.
Probably bounce back. I mean, Rizzo had a down year.
So did Bryant. He was hurt. So you could see them being a little bit better. I just think that he does enough. And going through his numbers last season, like he never really had like a prolonged slump. I was maybe sort of expecting the numbers to fall off in the second half. They didn't really. His first half and his second half numbers look really similar. I can't find a really good reason to not like him at 14. He's also got positional flexibility too.
That's a positive. You move around.
So I guess the only thing I would say is if you do notice that he continues to drop, like you probably don't have to take him at 14, which if you like him, that's fine. I know it gets a little dicey taking chances like that in the first round because guys don't usually fall more than like 10, 12 picks. But,
you know, from an auction standpoint, I think if for people who are out there, I just feel like the community is a little sour on him.
Like
and
you put him
more
up early and
to,
everyone's kind of just like,
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the case. You put him up early and people are like, no, I'm going to, you know, because there are some sleepers at this position that you could wait it out on. But for Yelich, you know, that's not somebody that, between the two guys, I think there's like, it's crazy. Like both will regress, but I feel like more people are willing to spend that high pick or that money on Yelich.
And it's probably just the safety, like we were talking about before. Let's get to a couple of the Houston Astro players here inside the top 20. We both alluded to Jose Altuve. I wouldn't say it's shocking to see him at 18. He was a little injury plagued last season.
One knee, really.
Yeah, I mean, in the playoffs too, like he clearly did not look right. And it reminds me a little bit, obviously it's not exactly the same thing, but remember the September, I think it was 2-3 years ago now, where Miguel Cabrera was playing through plantar fasciitis and almost couldn't run, but still hit like 320 because he's Miguel Cabrera. Altuve at the end of the season, like you really get the feeling talking to people and seeing his ADP fall like it has. Like if I just asked a random person, like, what do you think Jose Altuve's slash line was last year? People probably like, I don't know, like 280, but he still hit 311. Like,
just didn't hit 350.
Yeah, he just didn't hit 350. Apologies. So he's supposed to be healthy. Alex Bregman also coming off elbow surgery. They're pretty confident that he's going to be ready for opening day. So both these guys a little banged up. Seems like they're going to be fine. So you don't really have to take that into consideration too much. I guess the thing with Altuve that was most concerning, and this could just be an organizational philosophy at this point, and I kind of get it. Like, if you're the Astros and your lineup is as good as it is,
don't steal.
Why are you taking chances on the base paths?
Yeah,
so
100% agree.
That's the concerning thing, because is Altuve still worth a second-round pick if he's only going to steal 15 to 20 bases?
Yeah. I think yes. I think 15 to 20 is definitely doable. You bring up a good point, and throughout their lineup actually last year, like Springer was hurt.
Yep.
Carlos Correa was dealt with a back injury all year. He's somebody that doesn't steal a lot of bags anyways, but a lot of these guys were hurt, and there's a discount on basically all of them besides Alex Bregman. For Altuve, I still think he's, like you mentioned, on one knee, he still hit 300. He's still a patient guy, doesn't strike out a ton, walks, gets on base. If he's going to steal 15 to 20 bags, I still think that's fine. He's not a heavy home run hitter, but he can still hit you 15 to 20 as well.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's a bit of a stretch, but double-digit home runs is obviously doable. And last year, they were down, right? He wasn't in the first half of the season. I noticed he wasn't hitting those home runs, and maybe we chalk it up to the knee injury. Maybe that's somebody you want to follow along, pretty closely in spring. But for Bregman is the one that I'm super excited. I just think he's phenomenal.
He's amazing.
I just think he's amazing. Since day one, I think there was maybe a 6-week span when he first got called up.
He was
where he couldn't
awful
hit.
when he first got called up.
Yeah,
he was hitting
it.
I think he was hitting under 100 for a little while.
I remember going to the Rogers Center and watching a game, and someone had said to me, "Why did the Astros call up Bregman? He's hitting like 180." It was like, yeah, I mean, he's like 4 weeks in. He's fine. He's going to be a stud, and he is. He's unbelievable, and I think the scary part is he's continued to get better, like just a 5-tool guy.
Yeah, and consistently chirps Trevor Bauer on Twitter, which is great. Trevor Bauer seems like not such a great guy.
Yeah, Bregman chirps everybody, I feel like, but yeah, warranted for Trevor Bauer.
The Altuve thing is interesting, and I guess just to wrap it up, like you were saying, I think something interesting about Altuve is just you're getting him at such a discount. It's an obvious buy low spot. Mm-hmm. I don't think all of a sudden, I think he's only 28. Like, it's not like we're dealing with someone who's over the hill or anyone either.
Yeah.
Now he's a smaller guy. Injuries, these are not necessarily great things.
No.
But when you were kind of rattling off those numbers, it sounded a lot like Yelich. Like 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases.
Good average.
320.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably going to hit third this season again, you would think.
Yeah.
I don't see them changing, taking Bregman out of 2. It seems like he likes it there.
Yeah. They experimented with him at 1 in the playoffs, which is not something I think that they will do this year.
In my head, it just feels like Springer's going to hit leadoff, even if they keep kind of messing up with it. But I just feel like for where you're getting him, it seems like it'd be so hard for him not to hit value if he's healthy.
Yeah. I mean, is there anybody after that you would pass on him and go, I mean, the pitchers are one thing.
Yeah.
I mean, deGrom and Sale, but, after in that second round, I think he's just, you take the discount and you say, hey, this guy can return first round value. This guy could be a top 5 fantasy player.
And even comparing him directly to Trevor Story, which, like, I get it. I get the Story thing. And for as much as I think when I was kind of looking at each of these players, I was maybe trying to find the thing wrong with Trevor Story. And I actually owned this guy last year. And it wasn't really something I set out to do. It was sort of just, he was going in that like 110 to 125 range. And I was like, I guess I'll just take Trevor Story.
Yeah,
like
power, speed, Coors.
At the end of the day, Coors is a pretty good tiebreaker for most things. He had a really great season. 291, 37 home runs, 88 runs scored, 108 RBI, 27 stolen bases. The thing I really liked too, and we saw this especially in the second half of the season, like I understand Story's a flawed player. Mm-hmm. The strikeout rate got a lot better last season. Improved. And I think it was one of those things, and who was it? I think it was Justin Morneau, like off the face of the earth for like 5 years, maybe not 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, pops up as a free agent in Colorado and suddenly leads the National League in batting rate. And you looked into his numbers and it's like, okay, what's he doing? He never walked. He never struck out. He swung at everything. Yeah. He let Coors do the work for him.
Yeah.
And it kind of seems like Story was starting to do that. Second half of the season, 52.8% swing rate. Contact rate was up to 76.2%. You compare that to 2017, swing rate was at 48%. Contact rate was at 70%. 2017, he was seeing 4.12 pitches per plate appearance. In 2018, it was 3.89, and it was even lower in the second half.
Wow.
It sort of seemed like someone told him, look, you swing through a lot of breaking ball pitches.
Yeah.
When you get to 2 strikes, they're going to throw you breaking balls. just swing early.
Yeah.
Like, and if you're telling me Trevor Story is going to put the ball in play 75% of the time and is got the green light on the base paths, I'd rather have Altuve, but
I'd rather have Altuve too.
I can't really knock someone for taking him in the second round. Like, I know it seems like you're paying for last year's numbers, but
again, it's
I don't know.
I look into that second round and I see guys that are sour on him and Javier Baez. They see a little bit of regression. They see guys who, you know, can strike out a lot, but at the same time, these are still young players who, to your point, are learning their strengths. They're still very, very young. They got the power and the speed. And anytime that you can get half your games at Coors, man, and we'll talk about Arenado probably next year and the splits and Story splits will come up and that's a concern.
Yeah.
But at the same time, half your games are at Coors. And again, the power is legit. It's for real. We've seen it since day one, man, when he came up in the bigs and he just tore the cover off the baseball right away. And everyone's like, oh, regression. He can't keep this up. He's not going to hit 100 home runs, but he still is a very powerful hitter, and the speed is such a plus. And
I'll say this, obviously we've had a little bit of, and this is a tiny thing. This is like beyond tiebreaker. This is sort of just like something to think about. We have had some turnover in the rotations in the National League West. I understand that.
Yeah.
But you look back to last season, in terms of team plate appearances against left-handed pitching, 5 of the top 6 teams in baseball, it was the Dodgers, it was the Diamondbacks, it was the Giants, it was the Rockies, and it was the Padres. There are so many left-handed pitchers in that division. So many. And Story crushes left-handed pitching. So even if he only gets to see like 25, 30 more plate appearances against left-handed pitching than he would normally see batting anywhere else, we're talking about someone who's got like a 200 WRC plus.
Every time he plays lefties, you just play him.
He's so good.
Yeah, he is so good. And that's a great stat that you bring up. And, you know, people will laugh at that and it's just like splitting hairs, but that's how you split the hairs.
Yeah.
That's exactly when you're
inside the top 20, you got to split hairs.
Right.
Like, all these guys are
Besides
good.
the top 20, I mean, that's a phenomenal stat that you bring up. And yeah, you're right. He just crushes lefties. He hits them so well and it's an automatic. I mean, the price point on DraftKings and stuff like that, it's expensive when he's playing a lefty, especially at home. But it doesn't matter. It's every other day that this guy just crushes lefties. So it's a good point.
I wanted to talk about 2 more things before we get out of here. You've mentioned, rightfully so, and we've kind of outlined the reasons why people might be afraid of Story, why people might be afraid of Baez, et cetera, et cetera. One of the reasons is sort of outside their control, which is just maybe more than any other year I can remember, we've got just this cluster of like former, not even first round picks, but like top 5, top 3 picks in the last half decade who are now sitting in that like 20 to 30 range. So obviously we're talking top 20 here, so we don't have to get into this too much, but I just wanted to, Paul Goldschmidt's ADP right now is 21st overall. Giancarlo Stanton's is 24.7. Charlie Blackmon's is 27.2. Like if I told you last season Trevor Story was going to go ahead of Charlie Blackmon in drafts,
you're crazy,
that's insanity.
Yeah.
Clayton Kershaw, 31.9. Kris Bryant, 32.8. So I can see people going like, why would I take Trevor Story when I could have one of these guys?
Yeah.
Which guy were you most surprised wasn't inside the top 20?
I understand Bryant because of the injury.
I get Bryant too.
Probably Goldschmidt, to be honest.
I was shocked. I was shocked it was Goldschmidt.
Yeah, Goldschmidt is probably the one. I know he left Arizona. He's going to St. Louis. You know, everyone was so afraid of him when they had the
humidor
thing
and
in
it was,
Arizona.
Hey, for the first 2 months,
for sure,
a thing.
It was a thing. Absolutely. I mean, across the board, if some of their pitchers and the home runs, that decrease in that ballpark, but he's still. He's still a guy that I think can flirt with 30 home runs. It's a great lineup. I think Goldschmidt, the stolen bases is something that we always talked about is just maybe sneaky. You're not going to get, a whole lot. But
seems like those are going down.
They are going down with
maybe
age.
Maybe 10.
Maybe 10. I think double digits is, the max, but he could get there. Stanton, a lot of those guys, Charlie Blackmon too, actually. Charlie Blackmon is somebody that I think is just a phenomenal 3rd round pick.
Yeah.
I think he can, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes a top 5, not outfielder overall.
Yeah, sure.
As somebody who can just continue again across the board. He had a down year last year,
He also had strange splits. Like we talk about Goldschmidt struggling at home, and we all kind of figured that was going to happen because there was an actual environment change in Arizona. remember there was a point when Blackmon had like 13 home runs and 12 were away from Coors?
Yeah.
And you're like, what's
going on
happening?
here with
And then
that?
it sort of normalized by the end of the season. So
There was some regression from him from a couple years ago to...
Well, I think the crazy
to last
thing,
year.
and maybe the thing that people are harping on too much, I would say, because they shouldn't have valued it as much as they maybe did last season, is 2 years ago he had, I think it was 105 RBI.
Yeah.
He hit leadoff
From the leadoff.
entirety of the season. He never had a plate appearance outside of the leadoff role.
Yeah.
That just wasn't going to happen again.
Of course not.
Especially in the National League.
Right.
So when he comes out last season, and I can't remember exactly how many RBIs he got. I'm going to say it was like 70, 75, something like that. That's fine. Like,
Right.
It's the runs. Like, this guy has more runs than anybody else in baseball across the last 3 seasons.
Still stealing bags.
Yeah, I mean, and those have kind of... He's been under 20 the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
But still, if you're 15 stolen bases to go along with possibly leading the league in runs,
Yeah.
to go along with someone who probably could just hit 300 again,
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a
Hit
third-round
300
pick. That's
again.
great.
Yeah,
So
I think it's phenomenal.
I guess I can kind of see why some people are shying away from maybe the really volatile guys, because there is so much safety. Like, Goldschmidt to me should just be higher.
Yeah, he should be higher.
He was like, so June 1st on, hits 330 with a 272 ISO. Like, he was back.
He was the best buy
fine.
low candidate, I
Yeah.
think, in fantasy baseball. He was, a great second half. And you know what? I think he's going to be phenomenal this year. The one guy that, I probably still will stay away from in that
You're done on
third
Kershaw,
round
right?
is, yeah, it's, we've had this conversation over the past couple of years with Kershaw. Anytime a back injury pops up, and it's what,
bad news, man.
3 times now in the last couple of years,
bad
he's
news.
on the DL. And even in the third, I go back to some of the drafts that I've done. I took him in the 4th, I'll admit, but he was pitcher 15 off the board at that point.
Wow.
15. And that's how many people are down on Kershaw. Like, I love Bueller too. He's phenomenal. Like, I get it. Like, he had some great games in the second
take Walker
half,
Buehler
but
over
I
Clayton
mean,
Kershaw,
Bueller is
yeah.
going pitcher 10, 12 in some drafts, and Clayton Kershaw, like, there's obviously some risk. He's given up more home runs. The walks are up. The strikeouts are down. He's getting the hard hit rate there's a lot of red flags with Kershaw.
Velocity's down. It's all
Velocity is
happening.
down. But I mean, if he's going to give me 150 innings,
Yeah, that seems like an overcorrection to
Yeah.
have him at like SP 15. Like, I remember specifically talking to you about this last year. Like, I was putting together, I think they were way too early rankings. It was like October
we were talking about him and Chris
2017.
Sale, I think.
Yeah, and I came over and it's like, is it weird if I don't have Kershaw at 1? Like, the back kind of worries me, and I think Sale's been awesome.
Yeah.
And I think I still had, like, I'm not saying I was a savant or anything. Like, I
No,
still
you
had
still
I still
had
had
him
Max
as-
Scherzer behind Clayton Kershaw.
Right.
But the writing was sort of on the wall last year. Like, this is maybe the time to get off of Kershaw. But if he's going to drop this far,
I mean, if he's going to
think it's
go in
fine
the
to grab
4th
him in the
round,
4th,
Garion,
yeah.
if he's going to go as far as the 4th, as like I said, even past the top 12 pitchers, like, I think that it's worth the upside. I mean, you're not taking that risk in the 1st round. That was my problem.
Yeah.
Like, on average, a couple years ago, third overall pick, 3rd, 4th, 5th
Yeah.
overall pick. It's like, I get it, especially from like a roto league or rotisserie from those leagues, but I know, again, splitting hairs, but like, and you're in a head-to-head league and you're playing in fantasy baseball time, and I'm going up against you in fantasy baseball, I'm going to get one starter to Kershaw in our head-to-head matchup, and I picked him 3rd overall. It just
way to
makes me
go.
a little sour on him.
Kris Bryant was just someone I wanted to mention briefly. A lot of stuff going on with Bryant. He was hurt last season.
Yeah.
Like, he came off the DL to only go back on the DL
Yeah,
like a
it was a
week
rough year for
later.
him.
Like, clearly it was mismanaged, and that probably affected most of his season. They fired their hitting coach, Chili Davis, and I think Bryant actually came out earlier this week, so mid-January, to say, we didn't see eye to eye, me and Chili Davis. That's not great.
No.
And apparently Rizzo, kind of the same page. So
Interesting.
I don't know how, like, I think hitting coaches in baseball are not like nearly as influential as like offensive coordinators in football or anything, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I would agree with that.
I'd really take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But there was a lot going against Kris Bryant last season. If he's going in the 3rd round, I think I'm okay with it. But one thing I sort of wanted to present, and we were joking around with this a little bit before the show, Kris Bryant's now up to like 2,500 career plate appearances, which is it's a large sample. He's some of the trends we see in his stats, I don't want to say they're set in stone because, Jose Ramirez has happened all the time, but we're getting a good picture, a pretty clear picture of the hitter that this guy is. And for as much as we thought he was going to be a generational power hitter, it hasn't really happened yet. And, I look at the home run to fly ball ratio from last season. It was 11.2%. That's super low.
Yeah.
And that's something I would expect to rebound this year. But for those 2,500 plate appearances, his career home run to fly ball ratio is 16%. Like, that's not the number of a guy who's winning the home run derby.
No.
You know?
That's not a 40, 45 home. That's not a 40 home run guy.
So I'm just thinking, like, are we at a point now where it's wrong to expect more? Like, is he just Anthony Rizzo? Like, Rizzo's a guy, it's like 30 home runs every year. He's never going to lead the league in home runs, but he's never going to disappoint in that category. Is Bryant there, or am I maybe moving too soon with this?
I think...
Like, would it shock you if he hit 45 home runs this season?
No, it wouldn't shock me, but I don't expect it.
Yeah.
I don't expect him to even be a 40 home run guy. I know he has the power, and you're right, it kind of sneaks up on you how many plate appearances he does have, and we saw in the minors, and he was so exciting coming up, and you expected him to be, maybe a consistent 40 home run guy, someone who can flirt with a 300 average, be like a phenomenal top tier hitter, but... I don't see that. And maybe it is some of the injuries last season, but I didn't see it towards the end of 2 years ago either. I thought he kind of tapered off as well. So I think respectable 3rd round pick, 30, 35 home runs is what I really do expect from him. And, maybe still like a 275, 280. I don't think he's a 290, 300 hitter. I just don't see it. Like Rizzo is.
Yeah.
I feel like I think he'll bounce back more. I think he'll have a better bounce back season because the power from him and the average was definitely the first half.
He also, with how injured Bryant was in the second half, I think people forget that Rizzo was also super banged up in the first half. Like they kind of they flip flopped on their healthiness. So I'm with you on that front. Last question I want to ask you, and I don't have a problem with it. I don't feel like you're gonna have a problem with it, but maybe somebody does. So I did want to ask the question. Jacob deGrom, after having maybe the best season a pitcher I can remember,
I think the best season
had.
I've ever seen. I think
he's SP3. He's definitively behind Max Scherzer and Chris Sale. And even when you go into the numbers from last season, like as great as he was, and things were obviously outside his control from a fantasy perspective, he actually only finished as SP4 in points leagues because he had 10 wins. And wins are up and down. They're random. We know that. I mean, banking on wins from the Mets, maybe not the best thing in the world.
All they had to do is score 3 runs or 4 runs, I think, and he would have had like 25 wins.
It's nuts. It's nuts because he so rarely allowed more than 2 earned runs in a game. You'd think it would be easy. So I would say to bet on a rebound in the wins department, probably a pretty sound bet for Jacob deGrom. But I mean, would you have him higher? Would you have him ahead of those 2 guys, or is it just because he's still a really good strikeout pitcher? He's around 32% strikeout rate. Yeah. But Sale was like 4% ahead of everybody. He was like 38%. And Scherzer is just like a robot. He's set in stone. He's rarely going to miss a start. Yeah. And he's going to have like a 35% strikeout rate. So I think I'm okay with deGrom at 3.
I am too. And I wouldn't have him ahead of Sale. Scherzer is the clear one, even with the high fly ball rate that we've seen for years and the home runs that he allows. It doesn't matter. He
seemed to kind of fix it last year too.
He strikes guys out. And I think even still he had like the 3rd highest fly ball rate. But I mean, he's still fine. Like, especially in a points league, like you said. The wins... We joke about wins all the time, whatever. He probably will have more than 10. I mean, the Mets have improved their lineup. He would have to. I mean, I don't think he's going to go another 20 some odd starts in a row with 2 runs or fewer, which is the run that he had. I mean, I think it was broken up from Miami. I think he allowed like 3 runs against the Marlins.
It was the Marlins. Yeah. They did that a couple of
teams.
Scherzer also had a lot of problems with the Marlins.
He did. But deGrom is fine at 3. Again, we're talking about guys that you're paying for. I'm completely fine with this with deGrom for sure. 100%. I have no problem with it at all. Chris Sale is interesting because I've had this conversation with a couple people and they say, well, he's never really been hurt. It's like, I think 1 year he missed the first start of the season because of a foot injury.
Yeah, I believe. It was a freak foot injury, right? He was helping somebody move, or he was moving, and he like stubbed his toe and missed the start.
Is a foot injury. But last year was shoulder.
Yeah, that's concerning.
That's concerning to me.
Because he throws like he's a Stretch Armstrong. So.
Right? It's his unique, the way that he throws, the word I'm looking for is... anyways, if you watch him, it's the torque that he has when he comes across his body as a lefty.
Yeah, it's incredibly deceptive.
Right. And you wonder if, because a lot of innings, there's just a slight concern I have with the strikeout. Obviously, ratios are phenomenal. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. Even in that ballpark, he's still fine. Even in the AL East, the run support he's going to have, the defense behind him, there's a lot of positives.
One thing I did want to talk about with the AL East, though, and Sale in particular, and I'm with you, that it is in the back of my mind. I'm like, he's been the guy for years where you're like, that guy should get hurt sooner or
Right.
later.
And they shut him down a little bit. Maybe it was because they had
Yeah,
the big lead.
they brought him back really casually last season, which is probably for the best. Thing with the AL East, though, especially if you're pitching for New York or Boston, which means you don't have to face New York or Boston.
Yeah.
Like, I get Tampa's pesky,
Yeah.
and Tampa's lineup looks all right. They're probably going to win 85 games a season because they win 85 games every year.
Lineup full of sleepers.
If Sale gets to face the Jays and the Orioles 10 times next season,
That's a possibility.
Chris Sale versus the Orioles is not fair.
No.
That's a crime against humanity.
Yeah, I remember one time last year I was looking at props with Chris Sale, and I think it was his strike. It was like 9 against the Orioles, and
What, is he only going to throw 4 innings?
He hit 9 at 4 innings, and all of his outs, I think, were basically strikeouts in that entire game. So yeah, I mean that is
Caesar's
again,
Palace has their over. Do you want to take a stab at what their over under win total is?
for who? Baltimore.
Baltimore, yeah.
Oh my goodness, is it even 60?
No, it's 59.5.
Fair, brutal.
Seems high too.
Yeah, they're awful. They're pathetic.
bad.
They're
They're bad.
really bad.
So just if anyone out there does the AL East narrative, like
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing anymore.
No,
you're
you're probably right.
New York's tough. Like I don't want my pitchers pitching at Yankee Stadium. I get that.
Yeah,
Pitching at Fenway's rough too.
The lineups have changed over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Baltimore and Toronto were right there in terms of power.
Even,
over like 2 years ago, they were right there with.
But
Boston
even in the
and New York.
American League in general, like we mentioned it with Cleveland. It's a weird league, man. Like there's 6 teams that are maybe actively trying to win.
Yeah.
Like we used to talk about a lot. Like one of our tiebreakers was I'll take pitchers in the National League over the American League because like the National League gets to face some pitchers. The offenses, generally speaking, aren't nearly as good. But it seems like most of the teams in the National League are trying
You're
to
seeing
win.
a turn, right? You're seeing
I feel
Atlanta,
like-
and
I
you're
feel
seeing like teams like Atlanta and
I think
Philadelphia.
it might be. I think you might find some value taking American League pitchers just based upon the fact that there's not that many good teams in the American League.
Yeah, that's a good call. There's only Boston, Houston, New
Boston,
York.
Houston, New York, Los Angeles is going to try.
Yeah. Cleveland is still like they're
Yeah.
still hanging around, but they've lost some pieces.
But like Seattle folded
Seattle
folded
completely
it up.
folded.
Texas folded it up.
Yeah, even the Angels
Cleveland's
don't have
going downhill a
much.
little
Like
bit.
they didn't do really anything to improve their roster this year.
Oakland's young and all right,
Yeah,
but
they're an underrated. They're an underrated.
but one of the
team.
2 times you get to face Oakland, if you're Chris Sale, you get to
You
face
get to-
them at the Coliseum.
Yeah, the Coliseum, which is
So
a plus.
yeah, I'm not really scared of the American League right now. So that's something maybe to.
So
kinda
I think the
about.
worst teams, if you were to pinpoint the worst teams in baseball, I think
5
a
of them
lot
are
of them
like
would
the
come from the
American
American League, right? We talked
Yeah.
about Kansas City and Baltimore. Yeah, those are probably the 2 worst teams in baseball.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But baseball is good and
Yes.
baseball is fun. So we will wrap up this particular discussion on the top 20 by Fantrax ADP. That it's once again Chris Meaney. You can find his work at Fantrax or on the Athletic. Anything in particular you want to pump out, Chris?
Not really. We're gonna have the Athletic. Well, I guess the Athletic draft guide will come out first week in February. There's gonna be lots of great stuff from there. Saris, Seeley, Nando's writing some articles.
Oh, nice.
That's right.
Back at the
Yes,
wheel.
He signed up. Yeah, back at the wheel. So we're gonna have some stuff there, of course. And with Fantrax right now, I mean, rankings are already up on the website. Sleepers, busts. There's a lot of good stuff and prospects for anybody who's into prospects. So shout out to Eric Cross, who's just
always does good stuff.
yeah, he's dove deep like into 100 of the prospects. So there's a lot of baseball leagues out there, a ton of baseball or best ball rather drafts on Fantrax. So for anybody who wants to draft early, and we're going to talk sleepers later. I think now is a good time to get in there and
Yeah, if you
draft
wanna get those
before some of
sleepers.
these guys move up the board. Like we'll see.
We move
that.
lines, man.
Yes,
We move lines.
Absolutely.
So make sure to check out all that stuff for Chris. Fantrax again, also The Athletic. You might have heard of it by this point. Also, if you guys want to get into a draw for $20 DK, that's right, we're still doing it, even with Pat not here. I have that power. What you got to do, hit the like button on the video, obviously, even if you dislike it because I'm hosting, that's fine. Hit the like button so you can get into the draw, and in the comment section below, tell us who you think is overpriced inside the top 20. Is it Christian Yelich? Is it Javier Baez? Let us know in the comment section. As Chris mentioned, we are also going to be doing some sleeper videos, both positional and pitcher sleepers, so make sure to look out for both of those. I'm Garion Thorne. This has been the Pat and Mayo Experience. We'll catch you guys next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!